So a little bit about me. I actually started in the cleaning industry. So when I was 19 years old, I started a home cleaning company with my best friend from high school. And then over time, fast forward about 3 years or so, we did a little bit over $5 million in revenue. We started for less than $6,000. So both of us put in about $3,000 into the business. Okay. We didn't have any investors. We didn't have a lot of money that we put in. We were still in college and had jobs at that time. We didn't have any marketing, business degrees. We didn't have any connections or anything like that. So all we had was just us two, and we were just very hungry to make it work. So I'm going to try to give you all the best tips that I have. Eventually, I went on to start Booking Koala, which is home to thousands of entrepreneurs worldwide, all in the service industries. Okay, so we got businesses that are just starting out. We got businesses that are doing millions in revenue per year. So there's a lot of knowledge that I have through that business as well. And I can tell you what I see working, what's not working. So all that experience and knowledge is going to be going into this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So basically, the very first thing that you have to know is how much does a cleaning business make? Okay, so typically it nets about 30%. So you basically would need to be doing about $1.2 million in revenue per year in order to net 30%, which would give you about $365,000 per year in profit, right? And that profit still needs to be taxed later on. So you're basically, the 30% is after everything. And now you're just ready to be taxed, which comes out to be about $1,000 in profit per day. So remember that you have to be doing about 1.2 million in order to get there. And for me personally, the business does about 35%, but that will take some time, because at the beginning, you shouldn't be worried about optimizing for profits or anything like that. Okay. You should be optimizing for growth and optimizing for just customer acquisition. You want to go out there and get as many customers as possible. And during all of this, you will have to focus on brand, which we'll talk about later on. And that's how you actually grow a huge business. You have to be focusing on brand, because later you are able to achieve higher percentages in your business, net percentages. So like I said, 30% is the average. We're at about 35%, but that's because we do not spend a lot on advertisement and marketing. And the only reason you can achieve that is if you grow a brand properly. And that's super, super important, because if you grow the brand, you don't have to spend a lot on marketing or advertisement later on if you guys don't want to, right? So if you're comfortable making whatever it may be, once you get, to the 365,000 and you just want to cruise there, if you grow a brand properly, you can basically spend very minimal to just continue operating and not necessarily maybe growing too much, but you'll be able to kind of stay at that place. Now, if you want to continue growing, then of course, you have to keep scaling, you have to keep marketing, you have to get your business out there to get more customers and things like that. But that's a whole different story. Once you get to, that 1,000 in profit per month, then you guys can go ahead and decide what you want to do later on. Okay. So now we're going to pretty much get started and go through the steps that are needed to reach there. We're going to skip over, the registration, getting your insurance, getting your bank account, because I think those are the basics. Those are very easy things to do. So we're kind of going to skip them and just get straight to the important stuff. So the first point will be picking your industry and picking your niche, which kind of go hand in hand. So what I mean by that is, you already know, you're here watching the video, you already know you want to start a cleaning business, but now there are different industries within a cleaning business itself, right? So cleaning is a very broad topic, but now you can get into home cleaning, you could get into commercial, you could get into post-construction, you can do a combination of all three of those. But when you first start, I always say you have to niche down and don't go after all three. Go and focus on one of them, okay? Because the importance of that, you basically are able to figure out your exact customer you're going to go after. The more niche and the better you can understand that customer, the more you can see that customer, the easier it is to market them, right? Here is an example. If I'm looking for a home cleaning client, I'm able to market directly to them. Are you a homeowner in need of a home cleaning, right? And that does not apply to somebody that is in commercial or post-construction. That will only apply to one person. And you're able to niche down like that and advertise like that. And it's going to be easier to scale that way, right? Same thing goes if you want to market to a commercial client. You're going to be making your hooks, making your marketing strategies a lot differently. You're going to be making your website text and all of that stuff differently. It's going to be different for every single one of those people. So you have to pretty much niche down and start with your exact industry that you want to go after. And then each of those industries are huge. You could literally be making millions of dollars off of each one of those industries. So if you're thinking, do I want to be a huge business or do I want to stay small? It doesn't really kind of matter because you could go big with any of them. You're not going to stay small just if you stick around in home cleaning industry. You don't need all three of them to be making millions of dollars. You could literally be in one. So that's one misconception. You don't have to scale to all three of them to be making a lot of money. So you could always stay in one or expand to all of them if you want to. So first you have to figure out which one you want to do and niche down because it's going to make things easier at first. And it's always going to be easier to market to exactly the person that you want to market to. So make sure you find that person and market within that niche only, and then later decide if you want to expand or not, okay? There's going to be differences in each. So for home cleaning, it's, in my opinion, better than post-construction because it's easier to start, but you can't really say that because let's say for both of them in the home cleaning industry, you have reoccurring clients. In post-construction, you won't, right? In commercial, you also have reoccurring clients. So you have to kind of do the math and figure out which one you want to go after and which one you prefer because they're different. For example, post-construction, you might be able to charge somebody $1,000 to clean up the property or maybe even more. But for home cleaning, you won't ever be able to do that. However, you might be able to make a lot more money out of that customer in the long run because you might clean their property for many, many years. And all you have to do is just sell them one time and they might have service every single, week or every 2 weeks or every month for many, many years. Same thing applies for commercial. You might have an account where you're charging this much money every single day because you clean the office every single day, Monday through Friday, or, 7 days a week. So it's a lot different per each one of those industries. So pick which one you want and go to any of them, but you have to niche down and pick the industry. All of them are good though. And we have tons of Booking Koala users that are in a lot of these. Some people, actually a lot of people are in multiple, but when you start out, it will make it easier to focus on one of them, okay? So pick the industry, pick the niche. That's going to be step one. Step two will be to pick your location. So once you pick your niche and industry that you guys are going to focus on, now you have to pick your location. If I were to start, I would pretty much go into a saturated market, but you also have to realize how much you want to make, right? We're in this video talking about getting to that $365,000 per year in profit, which you have to gross at least 1.2 million, right? Because that 30% we talked about will be the profit. So you have to go into a bigger market. You cannot just go into a very small market because if you don't have enough people in that market, you will not get there, right? If you want to make, let's say, $20,000, that's fine. You can pick pretty much any market. You could even do the cleaning yourself and you could make some money. But if you want to go bigger, you have to pick a bigger market. And in my opinion, I would always start in a saturated market, right? When we broke into the industry, it was a saturated market. Cleaning, we're in Chicago. Cleaning has been around for decades before, right? And there were huge competitors. Some of the biggest companies in the world were in the city, right? But we went in there and that market, the Chicago market is a big market. It could be scaled to, millions of dollars just in that market. So if I were to do it, I would pick a saturated market, and that tells you that the market is good and there's always a way to break into the industry in any kind of business. So don't be scared just because you're, going somewhere where there's a lot of competition. None of that will matter. You can still break into the industry. And just to give you an example, customers leave cleaning services all the time because a cleaner might quit from a cleaning company. As an example, they don't want anybody else. They might start looking somewhere else. else. They might find you somehow, especially if you're just breaking into the market and giving, huge discounts to acquire customers quickly. There's a tip right there that we'll focus on later on. They might come to you and you got your first client. There's always ways to break into the industry. So I would not be scared going into a saturated industry or location. And that's what I would pretty much do. I would go into the most saturated one that I could find, or at least a big one. So if you live in Chicago or you live in New York, I would probably start there because it always helps if you know the location, but it doesn't matter, right? There's so many Booking Koala users that literally have services and do things remotely, and they've never even been in those locations where they operate from. And when we were going from Chicago and we were moving into markets like Houston, Dallas, Austin, I've never been to Texas, but we were able to generate, I think we eventually shut that down because I started Booking Koala, but we generated over $1 million in revenue just in Texas. And I've never been to Texas. So it's possible. And again, those were saturated markets when we were breaking into them as well many, many years ago. So don't be scared. Just pick a location that's big enough and go into that location. So that would be number 2. Pick your location. Number 3 will be structure your business. So once you know the location, now you have to go in there and start structuring your business. And I'm not talking about the legal stuff where it goes into, structuring or registering your business. I'm talking about hiring and marketing. So more importantly, how you're going to hire and how you're going to price your services. Because I think registering your business, you literally go to an accountant, or even online nowadays, you could register your business and that's super easy to do. So I don't even want to waste time or waste your time talking about those things. So we go straight into the important stuff. Structuring in terms of hiring and structuring in terms of pricing. So hiring, what does that mean? So you have to pick a structure, and that means basically W-2s or contractors. Are you going to be outsourcing all the work, or are you going to be hiring directly, training the people, the cleaners, and giving them the work? So you have to figure out which one you want to do. And it's important that you actually hire in order to scale and in order to actually get to 1.2 million in revenue and get that 30% net, which is about 1,000 per day in profit. You have to hire. If you're not going to hire, you will never get there. So it's important to know that if you're looking to grow to this level, you have to hire people and you have to trust them to go out and do the cleanings. If you don't do that, it's not possible to get to a certain level. So if you're looking to stay small, you can do the jobs yourself and you'll only go so far. But to scale, you have to hire, and now you have to learn the hiring process. Are you going to be hiring W-2s, training them, or are you going to be outsourcing the work to other people that are already performing cleanings? And how I started, we went the independent contractor model. And there's no really right or wrong. I do think independent contractors are easier, and as long as you're following the rules, because there's a huge difference between W-2s and independent contractors. With W-2s, you have all the control in the world. With independent contractors, you have no control. But I don't think you need control when you're hiring people that already know what they're doing. You just have to learn how to quickly filter them out. So you hire somebody, you could either have them go and do a test and of course pay them. They don't even have to know that, you're doing a test. You could just send them somewhere like a friend's house, pay them for it, see if they're good, and that's your first one. Or you could skip that, because if they have references, referrals, reviews from other cleaning services they work for, you should already kind of have a good indicator whether they're good or not. And then you could use Booking Koala, of course, to track their reviews and stuff and see if they're performing well, and then see if you want to keep giving them more jobs or not. So figure out which one you want to go with. Pick the structure. I have other videos on my YouTube channel as well that will help you do that. Even have a course, that helps you get to your first $1.2 million in the service industry. So make sure you watch that and it will help you out. So that's basically what I mean by figuring out that structure. So get the structure right and see which one you want to start with, right? And then you have to decide how much you want to pay them. So once you figure out which one you're going to go with, whether employees or contractors, you have to figure out how much you're going to pay. Like I said in the beginning of the videos, optimizing, you do those things later. There's nothing really to optimize in your business when you're not making money. You have to first go out and acquire your customers, and you have to focus on getting as many of them as possible. So that's key. So there's really nothing to optimize. So what I would do, and this is a huge tip, I would actually go out and hire by giving someone a lot of money. So I would probably go the independent contractor route and then give someone 70-75% per per job, and then I would keep like 25, 30%, right? And I would do that for a little bit until I get a little bit of revenue, a little bit of profit coming in, okay? Because the more you pay, you're going to be able to attract better people, which will give you less headaches, and it will help you secure reoccurring revenue if you're in a reoccurring industry. And I do like reoccurring industries the most because it's easier to scale. If you're able to pay 75% and they're happy because you're able to bring in the best talent, then it's going to give you a reoccurring revenue, and you're going to be able to optimize later. So you reach, $5,000 in profit, take a step back, see if, you want to now maybe reduce that. And the next people that you bring in, they might be at 50%, and you start to optimize, but you optimize later. You don't want to optimize at the beginning because you really don't have anything to optimize. You first need traction. You need customers. So when you first figure out how to structure your business and you figure out if you're going W-2 or independent contractors, then you have to hire, and then you have to figure out how much you're going to pay, which again, that was my tip, to pay a little bit extra to make your life easier until you start making some money. So that will be the structuring of your providers, your cleaners. You have to figure that out. And then what you have to figure out is your pricing, right? How much you're going to charge. And I think that one's fairly easy. Once you know your location, your industry, your niche, just go out there, find some of the biggest competitors, the ones that are already established, not the beginners, but the ones that are established, and pretty much try to stay as close as possible to their pricing. You don't want to copy people that are just starting out, because if you find them, they might not know what they're doing. They might just be reducing their prices to, try to acquire as much customers. They don't even have a business. So they might really just think that their pricing is correct because they're getting clients, but really they're undercharging. So you want to go and mimic somebody that's actually been in business for a while, and they're pretty big and they have their pricing figured out, right? So I would do that, and then try to stay as close as possible to that. And if you're struggling to acquire customers, you can use coupons later on to reduce your price, or, give discounts. But at least if they come back and your brand starts to kind of, get out there in your location, they'll book for the full price later on and not always for the discounted price. So I would go ahead and stay close to your competitors, and then leverage coupons and discounts, if anything, to bring those customers in at the very beginning, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later on in this video. Okay. So step 4 will be to build out your website. Okay. So you can use Booking Koala for this part. All you have to pretty much pay is $27 per month, which is literally nothing. You can have your website. You could have a portal where you keep everything. So website, portal where you keep everything. You would be able to have your providers in there and assign jobs to them. You would be able to have all your bookings in there and all that good stuff, so that you could see all your bookings, the upcoming, the job history. You could create your coupons. You could do your email marketing, your reminders. You could literally do everything in there for $27 a month. And that will be a great place to start. Okay. So, if you're doing research, you stumble upon developers that are telling you, hey, pay me $5,000 to build your website. I'm telling you, you do not need any of that stuff. I think sometimes people actually overthink this part. They think that you need some crazy website in order to get into business, and that's not true. So don't get sold on the idea that, a developer needs to build you a website. Literally any basic website will do that has some kind of booking functionality and all that good stuff. The only difference is once you start to scale, the better the system, the easier and better for you. Because once you start to have a ton of bookings, that's when it really starts to matter in terms of software and all the capabilities, because you need to save time, you need to get faster results, and that's what good booking systems do, and that's what good softwares do. And that's why I actually built Booking Koala when we first started, because there was nothing out there to scale us as fast as this software did. Okay. But at the beginning, people literally start with nothing, just a piece of pen and paper to do that. And I would not do that. I would already, start to learn the system, especially when you're small, because there's a lot less that goes into it, and then start to keep growing already properly, because you want to scale properly. So you want to already have the systems in place from the beginning, so you could go ahead and grow quickly and easily without, switching softwares later on. So utilize this, build out your website. It's super easy to do. We already have templates for you guys that are built in a way where it's going to help you get the lead from visitor to a booked client. So just go ahead and use the templates, change your logos, and start going out there and getting your first initial set of clients, because that's what really matters. Okay. Until you start making money, everything else doesn't really matter. It's all about the beginning, which any kind kind of booking form or any kind of website will do. So don't overpay, and you'll see you'll probably never need a, expensive developer or anything like that unless you decide maybe, you want to go $10 million per year plus. Then maybe you'll need something custom, but you'll see that Booking Koala is able to help you out at that point as well. So you probably don't ever need to spend a lot of money building out expensive website or tools. Okay, so step 5 will be hiring. We briefly talked about that a little earlier on, but this is super important. We talked about how in order to scale to 1.2 million, you have to hire. And I gave you the tip to hire well and overpay at the beginning to make your life easier, because you're going to be able to attract good talent. It's going to give you a lot less headaches because, greater talent will perform better, and it will just make things a lot easier for you. So make sure you follow that tip. And now when you start to hire, you have to figure out where to find good cleaners or individuals and how to kind of add them to Booking Koala. So basically, where would I look for them? Because it doesn't have to cost a lot. Like, a lot of people think that it takes a lot of money to start a business. And of course, it depends what kind of business. Some businesses need more capital than others. But today, a lot, if not majority, businesses can be started for a little bit of money, and service businesses can be started for very little amounts. Okay. So if you outsource everything, you're already looking for somebody that, has all the cleaning equipment, all the supplies. So you're investing $0 into the equipment. You just have to find these people. And to find these people, it could be free, right? You can go in groups. You can call or Facebook groups. You can go ahead and look at cleaning services in your area on Google, Yelp, wherever it may be, and call them, right? Call these individuals and be like, hey, I have a cleaning job. Would you want to take it? I'll give you 70%, or I'll give you this much to go ahead and clean, and I'll keep this much in profit. And after you call enough of them, you'll see somebody's going to say yes. And that costed you $0, right? And then, they perform the first job. And this is where it's going to get a lot easier with that tip that I told you earlier. If you pay 75%, you will be able to call some of the bigger companies and they maybe will do it, right? But if you will pay 50%, most likely they're not going to do it. And you're going to have to do some digging, find those people, and then contact them and see if they're going to be able to do that. But once you have someone that's able to do that, they'll go perform the job. And usually after the first one, they're going to see that you're legit. You're going to see that they're doing good, and you could establish your first relationship that way. And now you might have somebody to give jobs to going forward, right? This would be the way I would go ahead and go about it. So that's how I would go ahead and find my first person. And then it will get a little easier once you start to gain more revenue. But you could keep doing this until you get, 5 good cleaners or teams, whatever you want. And then at that point, once you start getting some profit coming in on a monthly basis, it will get a lot easier. Then you could start going after paid channels and, advertise on Craigslist, Indeed, Facebook, whatever it may be, to get more leads and get more people in that way. And if you're looking to get W-2s instead of outsourcing the work, then this way is going to be a little bit more challenging because you have to probably buy all the equipment and all that good stuff. So you also have to think about it that way as well. You could always transition over. You could start with contractors and then you could always transition over to W-2s, because with contractors, it's going to be easier than it will be with W-2s. And it doesn't say anywhere that you can't transition from contractors to W-2s later, but you always want to figure out how to make it easier on yourself at the beginning so you can get to some kind of profit, and reoccurring profit would be preferred coming in every single month. Okay. So make your life easier. You could always transition from contractors to W-2s later on. So step number 6 will be marketing and branding your cleaning company. So now we talked a little bit about this earlier as well. The better you brand your company, the easier it's going to be to grow. Okay. So it starts from the very, very beginning. And I kind of already hinted at a couple things that you have to do. But the number one thing it always starts with is hiring, right? So you have to get your hiring right, and you have to find the best cleaners possible so that you guys can go ahead and start branding properly. When you go ahead and find the best cleaners, it's going to allow you to keep more clients, get more reviews, get more referrals. And you see, once you start to compound that sort of action, that means your growth is going to compound. So, and it all starts with hiring. I would not let anybody go out and do these jobs, because if you send anybody and you're spending $200 to acquire a customer, let's say, and you acquired 5 customers that cost you $1,000 at that $200 a piece, and you send somebody bad, what if now those people leave because they were not happy? You can't save them. You're literally going backwards, because you're probably going to have to pay the cleaner. You just spent $200 getting somebody, and you are at negative profit per client. So if that's the case, you're never going to be able to grow. But if you send somebody good, they build the relationship with the client, they stick around, and they come back to you next week or next month and keep paying you, that means maybe you broke even on the acquisition cost, or maybe you lost a little bit on the first cleaning, but then you're going to recoup that money later on. Okay. And if you're in the post-construction business and that's what you're going after, then you have more wiggle room, but you still need good cleaners, right? Because if you, let's say it cost you $200 to acquire the customer and your ticket is $1,000, they're not a returning customer, or at least they won't be for a while, because maybe they won't need a post-construction cleanup for a long time, but they give you $1,000, you pay somebody 50% off of that one, which is still quite a bit of money, or 70, you still have 300 left over. And in that case, it cost you $200 to acquire the customer. You still have $100 left over. So you have to look at it from a different perspective, but it doesn't matter at the beginning how much you make right off the bat. What matters is that you guys are branding your company and getting the referrals out of these customers and getting reviews. So if I were to break even on a customer the first round, I would say that's a win, as long as I got a review out of them and maybe another contact where they could refer me to somebody they know that may need my service, because that's how it works. By hiring those individuals that do a good job, it's going to be easier for you guys to accumulate more customers quickly. And that's the whole thing, right? You want to get as many customers as quick as possible so that you could start to make all of this work. You can get more reviews faster, you could get more referrals faster, and all of that good stuff. Okay. So that's what you have to focus on. This is all branding, and branding is number one. And like I talked about earlier in this video, when you brand your company right, you could literally later on, once you turn so many customers and your name is out there, you get a lot of reviews, you're able to just turn off advertisement and spend very little on advertisement if you want to. So if you don't want to turn it off, you may need to have a little bit going out or a little bit of money going towards advertisement, but you are still going to have a good, successful business because of how you treated the customers and how you made sure that they were happy and you provided a great service. That's what it's about. You cannot go into it and think, I'm going to try to profit as much as possible on this cleaning. You have to go from a perspective of how did I leave this cleaning and leave it in a way that the customer was super happy. So again, branding is thinking about the customer first, okay? And if you think about the customer first, every decision you make is going to be easy. You're automatically going to know if that's the right decision or not, because you have to ask yourself, is this going to make the customer happy, or is this not going to make the customer happy? If it's not, then you probably should stay away from it, because in the long run, all this stuff matters. So now that you know that branding is important and you have to go, try to get reviews out of each customer, you have to figure out how to get your first set of customers first. I always say, figure out ways to get customers for free at the beginning. Don't waste your money on advertisement, especially if you're a beginner, because you don't know what you're doing. I remember when I first started, it took quite some time to understand marketing and advertisement. So if I were to spend money right away, if I had $2,000 and that's all I had, I would definitely not succeed running a campaign, because to understand marketing in full, it takes a long time to do that. It takes experimenting. You have to go through the steps, learn a little bit from your failures. You could watch all the videos in the world, but you have to have some skin in the game to actually understand it. And if you pay somebody to do it, nobody's going to get you results if you don't have a lot of money and you can pay them. And there's so many marketing companies, especially at the smaller levels, that are going to scam you and they're not going to help you. So you have to really be careful. That's why I always say, figure out ways to get customers for free, and it does not have to be hard. Again, if you're looking for a person that you're going to service and do cleanings for, go in your local neighborhood and go knock on the doors, right? Knock on 100 of them, 200, 300, whatever it takes to get the first one. It's always the beginning that's the hardest. Of course, you're not going to be doing that later on. I mean, you can be, but you can pay someone else later to do it for you if the strategy turns out to be profitable. But at first, go and knock on the doors. If you're really hungry, you're going to do it, and you'll see you'll knock out and get 2 customers. Even if it takes you a week, it's all about locking in those 2, 3, 4 customers, which might be the hardest thing that you will ever do. But what's going to happen if you're doing the service properly and you're hiring people correctly and they do it properly, you're going to have a hard time getting your first set of clients, but you're going to do it for free. They're going to stick with you, and you're going to have money coming in. And once you have money coming in, that opens up doors. Okay. You're going to have money to experiment with. If, let's say, you do hire a marketing company to help you out, you have money coming in. Even if they turn out to be a scam, you're not going to go out of business because you have that 5 set of clients, and now you could start to slowly experiment with things. Before I would even hire a marketing company, I would maybe try to figure out something by myself, try to attract leads, or hire a consultant that could help me out and teach me how to run Facebook ads or something, and start to go in slowly, because you'll be able to say, okay, I'm going to pay Facebook, let's say $50 per day. I'm going to do that for a week, let's say, and try to get some leads. And now you might slowly start to learn that strategy. So again, it's going to matter at the beginning of how much effort you put in, because if you don't have a lot of money, you have to figure out free ways to generate that income. And that's why I like reoccurring revenue businesses like home cleaning, poop scooping, things like that, commercial cleaning, because you can get that revenue that's coming in every single time. And once you put in that effort, you get a couple clients at the beginning, it's really hard to mess up later because you always have money coming in. That's how I would approach marketing. That's how I would approach branding. Okay, so step number 7 will be to achieve freedom in your business as soon as possible. This is one of the most important steps, but you have to get some money coming in order to get there, because if you don't make a lot of money, you don't have a lot of money to start with, you have to do everything, right? You wear a lot of hats in the business and you do everything. The only nice part at the beginning is that you get to outsource all the work to somebody, and you at least don't have to do the cleanings, right? Because if you had to do the cleanings, marketing, answering customers, hiring people, all that stuff adds up, and doing that for a year or 2 or 3, you're going to burn out. And that's the whole part about getting to that freedom part. You want to avoid burnout. So once you've outsourced everything, you start to make money. I always say, once you get to like $5,000 in profit, you have to start optimizing for freedom in your business. What does that mean? You have to figure out how to literally do as little as possible inside that business so that you could literally wake up and say, I just get to work on what's important in the business. And in order for you to do that, you probably have to outsource now customer service, and you could hire virtual assistants that are outside of your country. If you're in the United States or Canada, you could go somewhere where you don't have to pay as much and still get great quality service to at least help you out by answering customers, maybe your providers and things like that. So now if you're not answering customers, you're not answering providers 90% of the time, and you're only maybe handling the big things that go on in your company. At that point, you're going to almost achieve freedom, or you're going to achieve freedom because you're only going to spend maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour on your business. So if you get to like $5,000 per profit, that's when I usually say start looking for help, because maybe a VA is going to cost you $1,000 a month, and it's still great. There's also misconceptions about hiring VAs, because yeah, you could pay like $7, $8, $9 per hour to somebody that works outside of the US, like Philippines, and people are going to be like, well, how can you work for $7 an hour? That's like borderline crime, but that's not how it works. The reason why you're able to charge or pay $8, $9, 10 hours or $10 per hour somewhere else is because cost of living is much lower in those places. So paying someone $15 or $20 in the United States will be literally the same thing as you would be paying someone $6, $7 in a different country, because rent is cheaper, much cheaper, food is much cheaper, transportation is much cheaper. It literally averages out. So that's the beauty of remote work nowadays, you are able to do that. You are able to go somewhere else and pay someone else less money. So for $1,000, you're going to be able to get a good VA somewhere else, and they're going to be able to work 40 hours per week. And let's say now if you are making $5,000 after you hire one or two VAs at $1,000 each, maybe you're making $3,000 per month instead of that $5,000, but now you achieved freedom. You maybe now, instead of working full 10-hour day shifts, answering customers, dealing with cleaners, doing all sorts of things, now you might be working 1 hour or 2 hours per day, maybe not even that. And that's where you want to get to. So when I say get to $5,000 in profit and do that, I would say do that for sure, because you need to achieve that freedom. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over and, working 12 hours a day, just answering customers and dealing with the fires that happen at every single business, you're going to burn out. It's going to be a huge struggle. And once you burn out, the whole business collapses. So get to the part where you can achieve freedom, buy your time. And now that's where things get good, because if you don't burn out, you could literally focus the extra 10 hours per day or whatever on growing your business. And you'll see that going back to $5,000 per month in profit is going to happen super quickly if you just commit to growing your business instead of handling all the stuff somebody else could handle. So getting to this part is easy, because I'm telling you, if you're competing with a business owner that's literally not trying to achieve freedom, they're never going to win with you. They're going to burn out. They're going to hate their job. Slowly their business is going to collapse, and you're the one who's going to win at the end, because all you have to do is just figure out how to beat the other guy 24/7 or most of your day, while that other person is figuring out how to put out fires all day and stressing about the little things that are going in. That's the key. That's the key. So you have to get to that part. Okay. So step by step, watch the video and make sure you're getting to that part. So the last step number 8, build an environment that you are happy with. So in other words, make the business fun. I think this one is super important, because there's two things, right? If you, like the last step, if you optimize for freedom and you make things fun in your business, then I don't see why you would ever want to go into another business, right? Especially if you're cash flowing a lot of money. So now let's say you get to the point where you've optimized for freedom. You're maybe putting in 1 hour a day at your business, you made your business fun, and you're cash flowing or profiting that $365,000 per year, like we talked about in this video. Why would anybody want to sell this business, right? So you have to figure out how to make your business fun, because if you don't, you will still not want to work on your business all the time, and it's going to be pretty hard to grow. Now, there may be a chance you like money a lot, and making $365,000 will get you motivated enough to continue to work on that business, but I would still try to figure out how to make that business fun. For example, for me, I always work with people I enjoy working with, and that makes any business fun, because if you can go in and work with people that you like their company, that makes things a lot easier. You want to go in and hang out with those people 24/7. And one thing I always mention is, yes, today you can, for example, do everything remote, right? You could run an entire cleaning business remotely, and a lot of different businesses, not just cleaning businesses, you could run them remotely. But if you're literally working by yourself and you're not seeing anybody, and you're the type of person that needs to be around people to be happy, you should get some kind of office or a shared workspace where you can hang out with people, right? Probably an office where you could start bringing in workers in there and start growing your business that way, especially if you're trying to go further than that 1.2 million, 5 million maybe per year or something like that. You should have people around you that you enjoy your time with, if you can't just stay and work home by yourself, right? If you do like working remotely and you like working by yourself because you might be that type of person, this might not be a problem. But you still need to figure out different ways to make it fun within your business. Okay. I think that's a super important one. That's kind of like an extra tip, but basically if you achieve that freedom part, make your business fun, and you're cash flowing money, you'll never want to sell a good business like that.